Alright guys, I'm going to say some things in this video that could be offensive to billions of people on this planet. Ideas that incite murderous passions in deranged individuals. We too often allow emotions to fuel our cognitive dissonance and dictate our belief systems. And our fear of death and the afterlife drives us to hope for an eternal paradise. Our animal nature dreads a judgment. And yet we desire a judgment on those who commit evil. But we must filter reality through logic, not emotion. So let's use two witnesses as our guide: science and petroglyphs. Now, way back in 1853, this man, George Tate, a distinguished man of many fields, was talking about petroglyphs, specifically the undeniable global similarities of the petroglyphs. He submitted papers proposing dozens of possible explanations. And many decades later, along came Anthony Peratt, one of the world's most distinguished, important plasma physicists, conducting these experiments in the lab with high energy plasma, working for the government. And these images and forms he was getting were classified. And once he was shown these different petroglyphs around the world, it changed his life. And he became a petroglyph nerd. Now, as far as I know, I'm the only one to connect the ancient menorah to some of these same forms. And so what we do is, through the global ancient texts and the global petroglyphs and the global mythologies, we have deduced that Saturn, Mars, and Venus once loomed large in our skies. This configuration was fixed in the northern sky with the planets aligned along an electric Birkeland current, just as the Hubble telescope has taken photos of in deep space and other systems. And so, logically, with our current sun replacing Saturn in heaven, we can see how the pillar of fire and smoke spoken of in the book of Exodus, and the hailstones in Exodus, and the menorah in Exodus was not God. It was the cataclysm. It was the exit of the Saturnian Elohim and the entrance of Yahweh, the bright new sun. No man can look at the face of God. It's too bright. So I am proposing that the author of the Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, stitched together texts and oral traditions that were already thousands of years old. And I propose the idea of the flood of Genesis, that it was the same cataclysm of Exodus. Rainbows weren't a thing under Saturn's golden age. A short lifespan wasn't a thing under Saturn. Seasons and day and night, which are spoken of directly after the flood in Genesis, seasons, day and night, weren't a thing under Saturn's protective plasma sheath. The ancient Zoroastrian text concurs by stating that this event turned our peaceful, flat, ever-lit world into a violent, mountainous place of half-night. And I believe them. All the ancient Egyptians and Sumerians that people talk about, they all came well after the cataclysm. This is some of Anthony Peratt's work from the laboratory. And these side-by-side comparisons as he became a petroglyph nerd. Because he realized the implications. And once you prove the Old Testament is BS, the New Testament becomes BS by default. And the petroglyphs and the ancient menorah are the key and the lock to understanding. Really, that all the origins of all the religions can be easily deduced from the same cataclysm. These implications are extremely profound. And this doesn't prove there's no creative force. This doesn't speak to whether your soul goes on. But it gives you the courage to find your own path, free from these ancient control systems that still enslave minds today, that are awaiting a glorious return that will never happen. As a former devoted Christian for decades, I tell you, these ancient carvings and depictions of the so-called menorah deals a death blow to the heart of the Old Testament. For the student of the petroglyph depicted cataclysm that ended our dawning Saturn golden age forever. And these implications can only bring us to the stunning realization and conclusion that every Bible thumper, every Christian, every Mormon pedaling their bicycle down the street on a mission, every Jehovah's Witness knocking on your door, every bowing Muslim, every meditating Hindu are all victims of the high energy plasma that tricked and confused the ancients. Why is there a bird and a feather depicted here? It's because that is what was seen, this Northern Lights type of morphing high energy plasma during this cataclysm of the scattering of our original solar system. This is what was seen globally. I don't have all the answers and all the details, and no one does, and we may never. But by looking at these petroglyphs, we can get an idea of all the different formations and variations that were seen during this cataclysm. Back when Ra ruled, back when Kronos, Saturn, devoured his own children, which were likely other moons or planets that did not survive this cataclysm, that fell into Satan / Saturn / Kronos. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good night.